What's up, y'all? Welcome to In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. Yeah. My name is Evan Strong. Evan Strong. It's funny how we don't say our own names so clear because we know them. And so it's like, oh yeah, I'm just saying my name. But to somebody else, they might not hear what we said because we just fly through it and don't enunciate it very well. But yeah, I'm the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. And this is our podcast where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. Now, today is actually the 20th of March, 2025, and this is episode 83 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. It's titled Money Hungry. But I will say the last episode in sequence, right, episode 82 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, I filmed just a few hours ago, but it was on the 19th of March, 2025. And so, yeah, same day, actually, just, not even much longer after that one got completed is when we are now speaking. I'm saying that because I'm very prompted to make this right now. I'm feeling so convicted that this needs to be made as it's going to be right now, as opposed to any other time that I could. So I'll do what I do. As far as the intro goes, we'll talk about the company a little bit, what we are. I'll talk about clothing a little bit, first few minutes, maybe even 10, 15, right? Intro as we do. And then we'll get into the discussion on what the title is. And this is an episode that's going to be an episode, dude. So, In the Image Clothing Company has three sides to us. This side here, as I said, we discuss things just as they are, universal, undisputed, eternal truths. I'm sinful by nature, so is him and her, all the human beings. I mess up. I don't always say things perfect, but what we talk about here, the things that we do talk about here are things that don't change. We may not say them perfect because, hey, let me actually give a guarantee. I'll never be perfect in this life. So that's what we do here, though. In the image of our living God is who and how we're all designed by and in and through. And so that's why our name is what it is, because we address the human body and its natural function. This is what we do physically, right? We talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ in and through everything that we do because that's what is the truth of all things. Don't believe me, as I say, truth manifests itself to you. It's not about me or my words, but it's about the things that I can relay that are just what they are. One other third of our company is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where we do what I was saying. It's about the physical body, but not the fat content that changes or the muscle mass that changes. The body's foundational skeletal system. We come at it through clothing because it's the only thing placed physically on us. Clothing will alter the body if it's imbalanced, weight-wise, left to right, front to back, seams, doing anything to the body, buttons, drawstrings, shoelaces, zippers, pockets, all things, anything, and everything, sizings, all the things, right? When it comes to clothing, we address sitting naturally, standing naturally, eating naturally, how to really stay hydrated, sleeping naturally, all the things that a human being does, and how to just allow, keyword, the human body to work. It's just a machine that's designed with operations. We can only let it do what it was designed to, and it was designed to work. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Designed to Work. But a lot of people are wearing things nowadays that's not even their fault as far as the level of damage and alteration that's happening to their physical bodies that comes from these items of clothing that are not clothing. It's plastic, it's fake artificial materials that didn't even exist even decades back from today's date, and it's getting passed off as clothing, and people are passing out and dying. And that's not an exaggeration. Really. Another third of our company is In the Image Clothing Company Music. You've heard me beatbox a little bit throughout this intro. I'm very musical. I am a fingerstyle guitarist, really, where I dwell within music. I don't currently have a guitar of my own, so when I do get another one, I will be making more music with that. But I address setups of guitars to allow them to mesh with the only way the hands will work, because that's what we use to play them. And the hand in the human being is essentially the shoulder, just as the feet are essentially the hips. The body only works as a whole. It can't be altered because it only works the way that it does. And because of that, we'll talk about clothing real quick, where it has to be on everybody. If you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're tall, if you're short, if you're skinny or fat, if you're on any part of the earth or in any time period to ever be, clothing has to sit in the same location for everybody to allow its operations to just be unaltered. The pant waistline needs to be entirely above our hips, slightly higher in the front than the rear to keep the body in its neutral position. The pelvis, structurally, and the core muscles, activation wise. The tops that we wear, the seams on top of our shoulders, need to be evenly sitting behind the little bones that are on the peak top part of our shoulders. Those bones determine where the shoulders go. The body tries to find seams, quote unquote. That's how I used to word it a lot back in the fall of 2024, early foundational in the Image Clothing Company main side videos. The body will find seams in a sense, and so the shoulders naturally sit behind the body, so that's where the seams need to be. The edge seams of our shoulders need to be at the edges of the shoulders because that's where the operation is. So, yes, I like to mention button-ups and how they are different than just a single seam on top of the shoulders. Button-ups have a band of material that naturally sits behind the shoulders. They're great. In the Image Clothing Company clothing, button-ups will be one of the things that we do have, for sure. So, staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. 100% natural materials, right? In the Image Clothing Company clothing when it comes. Purchase it in your size. Never purchase it oversized. That is so damaging to the human body. It's a very, 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 very big imbalance in a way that we maybe don't really realize. Now, 2 prerequisites in the Image Clothing Company has, because these are things that are kind of conditional: shoelaces and tags. Not all clothing has those 2 things. When you do have shoelaces, though, there's only one pattern you can weave a rope across the top of the human foot to not alter the structure of the skeletal system in the feet and ankles. That is what we call in the Image Clothing Company shoelacing technique, found wherever you find us at all, ever. It'll be there. We've got the internet. With our technique of shoelacing that we just show, because of the reasons we do, no alteration to the body, otherwise damage happens, okay? We tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside on both sides of the body to the center line that is there. The body has to stay centered on an earth with gravity pulling it straight down. The spine is in the center, as well as all the other things that I mentioned are. The sternum, the nose, the trachea. Yes, okay? Secondly, to shoelacing, we remove all tags from within clothing in shoes as well, because anywhere a tag is placed, it's causing either a physical gap, altering the skeletal system's only workings, and or just not allowing the musculature that is placed against to activate. And the body has to work as a whole. So if anything's deactivated, something else and many things are compensating within the body, and there's a lot of problems at that point. So here we are, episode 83 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled Money Hungry. Let me give a little background for Evan Strong. Evan Strong. Maybe I should say my name a little bit clearer when I say it to let people know what it is so that they know what it is. That's something maybe I should start being a little bit more intentional about the first time, because a lot of times I repeat myself after I realize I didn't say it so clear. But I grew up and now I'm an adult. And between some of that time that happened, I worked some occupations. I've had about 13 what you would call quote unquote jobs. We have a form at this time in the United States of America that we call a W-2, which is just like how the government decides that you're officially working for somebody and you can be on like the tax thing, right? You file taxes, you're on payroll, it's like official. So I've had, yeah, as far as I know, that is the actual number 13 jobs. Holy cow, what's a job? It's my job to sit here and speak truth. So I'm trying my best. But I've worked in the food industry. I've worked as a janitor. I've worked at a couple car dealerships. Yeah, I've done a lot of things. I worked at a grocery store in multiple different positions, managerial positions, supervising positions, produce. I worked for the post office, but not for the post office. We had a post office within the grocery store that I worked at, and I knew how to run it. I've done a lot of weird things, dude. Weird to me is why I say weird. I worked at a hotel as a housekeeper. Yeah, I've done quite a few things in my days, really. And who cares? A lot of people are money hungry, brother. Money's not gonna ever satisfy you. Let's get something out of the way because it's in a lot of hours. And that's what's stopping our progression. Money's not what we're after. All money is a representation of value. Let's talk about this, give a little rundown. Sounds like I'm doing the intro over again. That's how I word our intros for In the Image Clothing Company podcast. And this is episode 83 titled Money Hungry. So let's talk about what it really is. Because it used to be, and I've actually laid this out pretty well just like this in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, but we're going to get into it more here. Money used to be whatever it was, then it was something else, then it was something else, and then it was something else. At times in history, money has been physical blocks of mineral, gold, silver, whatever. Other times in history, money has been coins that we call currency. Currently, it's a lot different, right? We've got paper that we think is worth something until it burns and it doesn't exist in the same way that we thought it was before. But nowadays, we've got the internet. We've got technology. And not only is money something that we can have on our, what we call devices, holy cow, we're creating things that don't exist. But it really doesn't exist because it's just a number on a screen. But even that, there's not a number there. What a screen is almost always at this time period a piece of glass. And behind it, this thing called an LCD, which is a bunch of little tiny colors. This whole span of what we call the screen has thousands of little tiny red, blue, and green lights next to each other. And there's just a lot of them. And so they can display different colors, which combined will make us perceive that it's showing us something. And a lot of times what's perceived is a representation of a layout of what we would consider a bank account. And within that, it's just color, artificial light shining into our eyeballs, displaying what we know as a number, which means something to us, apparently, but it doesn't exist. Literally. No opinion, no kind of philosophical, this guy's trying to go far-fetched with things. That's what it is. We talk about things as they are, there you go. That's your money. Maybe you've got 20 billion monies, or maybe you have like 400 monies and your quote-unquote rent for the place that you dwell in costs you 375 monies, quote-unquote, and then you have to still eat and do all the other things before the next quote-unquote payday comes, where you quote-unquote replenish your bank account, which is just changing which colors are going to display on what we call a screen of a modern device in 2025. Wow. And I could have gone deeper with how, like, weird it really is. So we might talk about it more in the ways that I kind of just was touching on what it is, but that's what it is. I'm not making it something it isn't. That's what it is. That's what it is. So it's a representation of value. These little lights that display into our eyeballs are representations of numbers, which are representing, yeah, check that out, which are representing the amount of what we call currency we currently have in what we call a bank account. And what is that? And who's to say? Because this guy banks over there, but that girl banks at that place, and who is better? But their money's not actually within that area. But again, the idea of how much money this person seems to have is being held there as far as they uphold that quote unquote number being what it was last until changed by you using what we call change, which used to be coinage, but sometimes changes to something else to purchase something. I can go as deep as I can go, but I want to make it as real as it is. I'm not making this something it isn't. That's what it is. Money, it's not a real thing. It's a representation. There's parts of the earth that don't use money in the ways that a lot of people would think of money. But there's what's called the barter system, where people trade things, right? You think about trade routes. People didn't used to interact with people across the earth until we could ship things because people wouldn't live if they tried to sail across the ocean to the other continent. But then they started making better boats and bigger boats. They could stay on top of the water long enough to get over there and hold enough supplies for people to eat and stay nourished and alive for the amount of time it takes to get to the other continent. So you can then trade things with people, and those things themselves are representing. I love that. Things are just representations of a value, meaning somebody else chooses to value this thing more than what they have, and so they'll trade you for it. Somebody else chooses to value what we would label as a $100 bill. In other words, a piece of paper. They value that over their something that you are trading for that. It's not a real thing. It's a representation. No opinion. This is just the truth of all things, the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, people are silly. I was silly. I'm silly now. People are human beings. Human beings are sinful by nature. We don't know what's going on. A lot of people think they're in charge, and so they are now what's considered a boss. Bossy people, man. They think they're over somebody else until their career is. Now they got fired because they overstepped with their quote unquote authority. So let's get a little bit real. I think you can tell I'm hitting this hard and I'm knocking some things out of the park, dude. I'm knocking some things out. Please. Could we just knock some things out? Right? Pearl Harbor, tossing some things overboard. Shout out to Toy Story. I remember Woody on that movie. He'd pull his string and he'd say that. I think that's what it was. Somebody said, toss him overboard. Anyway, that's what happened within the Boston Tea Party, dude. They, as far as I'm aware, they just, got a little bit fed up with things costing so much and whatever, so they threw stuff over the side of the ship into the harbor, like, drinks and things, and just kind of showing how ridiculous it is that things cost money, because it's not money that we're after as human beings, but it's, again, that representation. We want something, and money represents a certain amount of value that thing holds, and so we trade it for it. But people are so money hungry, and they want a job. Why? Because you want the things that the money that comes from doing the job can then get you. But it's not the money you want, and most people don't want to do the things that they're doing at their quote-unquote job. They want something else, and they feel like they got to do those other things before they can get that thing. And maybe it's not even a want, maybe it's an actual need, right? Like food or shelter. And people will take what we call quote unquote money and use it as a compensation for a place to live or a sandwich. Shout out to Joey Tribbiani in the TV show Friends, who's eating a lot of sandwiches often. I got some pain in my jaw, dude. I've talked about it, and it's still there. So I'm not complaining, but boy, does it hurt. Jaw pain is no joke, dude. Holy. Now, money hungry. A lot of people are, but they don't understand why, and they don't even understand what they're after, and they never are fulfilled or full in the sense of like being hungry, right? And then you're filled in the stomach, in your digestive system, right? People don't get full after they get more money, but a lot of times the more money they get, the hungrier they get. I said this phrase in one of these past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and it was, you'll never get enough of what's not for you. And that's just the case, man. So in case you think you will, well, be careful what you wish for, because once you get more and more and more and more money, you'll just want more and more and more money, and it will never fulfill you, but you're hungry for it. Really, what people are hungry for is what we call calories. A representation of the amount of energy, something that is ingested into a human being's physical person, will give them, right, when they eat food. So again, a lot of things are just representations of other things. We live in a world where we're so lost, if we are, and many people are. So the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of all things, our North Star, our truth, that is the only one that there ever is or could be or has been. Holy cow. So stop being money hungry, dude. I got, this girl one time getting me to believe that she was in love with me, right? She broke up with me because she didn't get what she thought she wanted out of me. And so it wasn't me that she wanted. But one of the big things was she saw that I had a cool car. And I had a cool car at the time. I mean, pretty much anybody would say my car was cool. It's not about me, but the car itself was pretty sweet. I thought so as well, right? Oh, man. But then she realized I didn't have a job. I didn't have money at the time. And so that was one of the reasons why she treated me the way she did. She was money hungry. And I get it, we got to have the things that we have to have. We have to have food. We got to have a place that we can stay out of the elements. We got to have the things that keep us alive and that keep us relatively, quote unquote, comfortable, right? As in just not like just trying to survive every day. If there's more that we can do to live a life that's more flowy, if you will. But when your focus is money, your end goal will be something that isn't, because you'll never get enough of what's not for you. And money's never going to fulfill you, but it's appealing because people think that they will be satisfied when they get more money, when they get the promotion, when they get the raise, when they get a higher salary or whatever it comes to that's going to compensate you with more money. People think that's actually going to help them, and it never will. Ever. In some ways, it might be easier to receive things because now you have more perceived value to trade with somebody for something else that you can use. Yes. But it's never going to actually fulfill you by any means. And so money hungry. We live in a money hungry society. The United States of America is what I'm speaking for primarily because that's what I can speak for out of personal experience. That's where I've lived my entire life up until today's date. I'm 25 years old. So I get so, you know, understanding. Holy cow, what's he saying? I don't know how to word it, but I am so understanding for people, man, and I feel for people so strongly when they think that money is what they want, and then they get it, and they're not satisfied, and they're like, well, why? Well, because it's just a representation of something that is helpful. Money's like the middleman, money's like the messenger. And the point of sending a message isn't the messenger. The point is getting your message to the person it's supposed to be received from, right? The point of trading money for things isn't the money, it's receiving the thing that you are trying to get by using the money as the messenger, right? And again, money is whatever we're labeling as this thing of value we are using to trade at any time period of existence on the earth that we have been given as equal human beings, sons and daughters of our living God, Jesus Christ. So I'm wrapping it up with that. To date, this is probably the shortest episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, but this is all it needs to be because forever it's always the same. It's a representation of value. We can label it currency, money, wealth, shoot, I mean, whatever word you could ever use and whatever people try to do, changing what words mean, which you can't, but they never really mean anything anyway besides our gods, because he doesn't change and our dictionaries tend to. So, yikes. Today is the 20th of March, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 83, titled Money Hungry. So please don't be, because it's a waste in all ways that it is. It's a tool, and it's not terrible used as correctly as we can, being human beings and being desirous creatures. But please don't be money hungry. I will try my best not to as well, but we're all human beings and we are all equals. So yes, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the place to find the fullness of the truth of all things. In the Image Clothing Company, we'll have clothing available in the Image Clothing Company clothing when it is made out of 100% natural materials, staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. If you ever want to purchase it, if you want to, keyword, you don't have to, do all that you can to get it in your size. Thank you, and thank you. Goodbye.